I never imagined how one decision could unravel everything I thought was stable in my life. My name is Emma, and I'm in my late 30s. For the past 8 years, I've worked at my husband David's family-owned firm in Chicago. It was meant to be a new beginning, a chance to blend my skills with David's ambition. But looking back now, I realize I was stepping into a storm I wasn't prepared for. The firm, a modest operation with just 9 employees, is run by David's father, Richard. Richard prefers to keep his distance from daily affairs, leaving the real work to David, who's being groomed as the next leader. This arrangement seemed to work well until it didn't. My role in managing operations was significant, but it wasn't without its challenges. My involvement, which I thought was helping, only added to the tension within the family. David's mother, Sarah, is where most of this tension brewed. In her early 60s, Sarah had retired from her own career, supposedly to handle our home. But she rarely took on her responsibilities. Instead, I found myself juggling both the firm and home chores. I remember how Sarah's discomfort grew with every day I spent in the office. The turning point came one sweltering afternoon. We had been arguing about something trivial, or at least it seemed so at the time. Sarah, in one of her frequent outbursts, threw a scalding cup of coffee on my shirt. It was as if all her resentment had boiled over into that single act. I stood there, stunned, feeling the hot liquid seep through my blouse, scalding my skin. Sarah's face was a mix of anger and satisfaction. "You've made a mess of everything," she spat, her voice dripping with disdain. It wasn't just the coffee, it was what came next that shattered me. Sarah declared that her younger son, Eric, would be taking over my role. Eric was only 20, recently back from Los Angeles, where he had grown disillusioned with college life. To say he was unprepared for the job was an understatement. But Sarah, in her certainty, dismissed my years of hard work as inconsequential. She handed me a pre-written resignation letter and ordered the guards to escort me out. I left the building with a heavy heart and a sense of betrayal. How could everything I had worked for just dissolve like that? The shock of being removed from both the firm and our home left me feeling adrift. I knew I needed to talk to David and Richard, but I was terrified of what they would say. David, always the voice of reason, suggested I take a break to clear my head. Richard, though less emotional, agreed that some time away might be beneficial. With a heavy heart, I agreed and decided to take a short trip. I hoped that distance would bring clarity. During my time away, I received an urgent call from Eric. His voice trembled as he confessed he was overwhelmed. Sarah's assurances that the role would be easy were far from the truth. Eric struggled with the basics, accounting, staff management, and even the day-to-day operations were beyond him. It was clear that Sarah had drastically underestimated the complexity of the job I had handled for years. When I returned, the atmosphere at the firm was even more charged. David and Richard broke the news that Eric had made several disastrous mistakes. One of the most significant errors involved offending a major client, a mistake that put the firm's future at risk. My heart sank as they revealed that Eric's missteps could potentially lead to the collapse of everything we had built. Richard, faced with these dire circumstances, announced that the firm would likely need to merge with a larger company. He and David believed this was the only way to ensure the firm's survival. Sarah's reaction was explosive. She was furious, adamant that David should take full control of the firm instead of allowing it to merge. Her refusal to accept the reality of the situation only added to the mounting stress. It was during this chaotic period that Richard made an even more shocking announcement. He revealed his decision to divorce Sarah. The accusations he threw at her were harsh, neglecting her responsibilities at home, undermining my contributions to the business, and even having extramarital affairs. Sarah's shock and anger were palpable, and the family dynamics grew even more strained. Richard's decision to expel Sarah and Eric from the family home and arrange temporary accommodations with an acquaintance only added to the confusion. It seemed as though everything was falling apart. In the midst of all this turmoil, as I grappled with the loss of my place in the firm and home, a new development emerged. The complexity of our situation highlighted the deep fractures within our family. Little did I know that amidst these challenges, there was a glimmer of hope waiting for me, a hope that would come to redefine our future. The days after being ousted from the firm and our home were a whirlwind of confusion and heartbreak. I spent my first few days in a small, rented cabin by the lake, trying to piece together what had just happened and what my future might hold. The serenity of the place did little to calm the storm inside me. I felt like I had been cast adrift, with no clear direction. David and Richard were supportive, encouraging me to take this time for reflection. Their sympathy was a balm, but it didn't erase the betrayal I felt. David had always been my rock, but I could see the strain this was putting on him. I knew he was struggling with his own sense of responsibility, both towards the firm and towards his family. It wasn't long before my phone rang, and I saw Eric's name on the screen. My heart sank. I had hoped that, after the way things had ended, I wouldn't have to deal with him. But his distress was evident, and I knew I had to hear him out. "Emma, I don't know how to handle this." Eric's voice cracked as he spoke. "Everything is falling apart. I thought I could manage, but I'm lost. I don't even know how to do the accounting properly, let alone deal with the staff." His admission hit me hard. Here was Sarah's youngest son, who had been given my job without a moment's thought, struggling with every aspect of it. Sarah's insistence that the role would be a breeze was laughable now. Eric's struggles underscored just how much Sarah had underestimated the challenges I had managed for years. Despite my own pain, I felt a pang of sympathy for Eric. He had been thrust into a situation that was far beyond his capabilities. I offered him what advice I could over the phone, but I knew it was a short-term solution. Eric needed much more support than I could provide from a distance. After a call, I tried to refocus on my own situation. I spent my days walking by the lake, reading, and attempting to clear my mind. David and Richard visited occasionally, and their updates on the firm were never good. Eric's mistakes were accumulating. Reports of lost clients and financial errors were becoming frequent, and it was clear the firm was in deep trouble. One day, David arrived with a serious look on his face. He and Richard had decided that we needed to confront the reality of the situation head-on. "Eric's errors have put us in a very precarious position," David said. "We've talked it over with Richard, and he's decided that the firm might need to merge with a larger company. It's the only viable option to save it." The news was both shocking and expected. I knew the firm was in trouble, but the idea of merging felt like admitting defeat. I could see the strain in David's eyes. This decision was not made lightly. Richard believed it was the only way forward, but Sarah was vehemently against it. She wanted David to take full control, convinced that merging was a sign of weakness. As if the situation wasn't complicated enough, Richard had another bombshell to drop. He announced his intention to divorce Sarah. The reasons were painful and deeply personal. Richard accused Sarah of neglecting her duties at home and undermining my contributions to the firm. He even went so far as to reveal her involvement in extramarital affairs. The revelation was a shock to everyone, including me. The family dynamics were unraveling. Richard's decision to ask Sarah to leave, along with Eric, was met with outrage and confusion. Sarah's departure, along with Eric's, meant that the house was now a place of tension and unresolved issues. I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of relief, mixed with sadness. Sarah's exit meant I wouldn't have to face her confrontations anymore, but it also left behind a void that was hard to fill. With Sarah and Eric gone, David, Richard, and I were left to deal with the aftermath. Preparing for the merger was a monumental task. The employees were anxious and unsure about their future. Richard and David worked tirelessly to ensure the transition was as smooth as possible. It was a lot of work, but there was a glimmer of hope in the form of our efforts to stabilize the firm. During this period, I tried to find some normalcy. I focused on myself, on the quiet moments I had to reflect and plan for whatever came next. I thought about my future and what I wanted from it. As I settled into this new routine, an unexpected discovery brought a new dimension to my life. I found out I was pregnant. The news of my pregnancy was a turning point. It was unexpected and filled me with a mix of emotions, joy, fear, and a sense of purpose. Amidst the chaos, this little spark of hope gave me a renewed sense of determination. It was as if life was offering me a chance to start anew, to build something beautiful out of the rubble. As I prepared for the changes ahead, I knew there would be challenges. The firm was on the brink of a major transformation, and my personal life was about to take a significant turn. But for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of clarity. The future was uncertain, but it also held the promise of new beginnings. The days following the announcement of the merger and the personal upheavals in our family were a blend of tense negotiations and emotional struggles. I had returned to Chicago, trying to adjust to the new reality. The house felt different without Sarah and Eric. It was quieter, but the silence was heavy with the weight of unresolved issues and lingering hurt. David and Richard were working tirelessly on the merger. The firm, which had been my professional home for 8 years, was on the brink of becoming part of a larger entity. The transition was not just a business deal, it was an emotional roller coaster. The employees were nervous about their futures, and the weight of responsibility was palpable. David, ever the steady presence, was deeply involved in every detail of the merger. "Emma, it's going to be okay," he would reassure me, though I could see the strain in his eyes. "We're doing everything we can to make sure the firm comes out of this stronger." Richard was similarly focused. He had thrown himself into the merger negotiations with a determination that was both inspiring and exhausting. He had been a guiding force throughout my tenure at the firm, and now he was navigating this complex transition with the same dedication. Yet, there was a noticeable distance between us, a gap created by the recent family conflicts and personal revelations. One day, while sorting through some old papers in the office, I came across a stack of photographs from the firm's early days. They were reminders of how much we had built together. The firm was more than just a business. It was a testament to years of hard work and dedication. As I flipped through the pictures, I couldn't help but feel a pang of nostalgia for the times when things were simpler. Amidst the chaos of the merger, David and I were also grappling with the reality of our changing family dynamics. The news of my pregnancy had become public knowledge, and it brought mixed reactions. Some were supportive, offering congratulations and well wishes. Others were more reserved, unsure of what the future held for us. I remember one evening when David and I sat in the living room, talking about the future. "Emma, I know this is a lot to handle," David said, his voice filled with concern. "But we're in this together. The firm will be okay, and we'll figure out how to balance everything." His words were comforting, but the future still felt uncertain. The merger was a significant step, and it was hard to predict how it would affect our personal lives and the firm's future. The reality of becoming a parent added another layer of complexity. I wanted to be excited about the new life growing inside me, but I couldn't shake the worries about how it would fit into our already complicated lives. The day of the merger approached, and the atmosphere at the firm was one of anxious anticipation. The employees were preparing for the transition, and David and Richard were finalizing the details. I did my best to stay positive and supportive, though it was clear that the merger was a major shift for everyone involved. Just when it seemed that things might settle into a new routine, a new complication arose. Sarah and Eric, who had been staying with an acquaintance, reached out to me. Sarah wanted to meet, and despite my reservations, I agreed. The meeting was awkward and tense, with unspoken grievances hanging in the air. "I didn't come here to fight," Sarah said, her voice tinged with fatigue. "I just wanted to see how you're doing. I know things ended badly, and I regret how it all unfolded." Her words were a mix of apology and defensiveness. She had always been a difficult person to read, and this encounter was no different. I could see that she was struggling with the changes and the fallout from the divorce. Eric, sitting quietly beside her, looked exhausted and uncertain. "I appreciate you reaching out," I replied, trying to remain calm. "But it's been a difficult time for all of us. I hope you understand why things happened the way they did." Sarah nodded, though her expression remained guarded. "I just want things to be better. For everyone's sake." The meeting didn't resolve everything, but it did offer a glimmer of understanding. Sarah was still grappling with her own issues, and Eric was trying to find his footing after being thrust into a role that was beyond his capabilities. With the merger complete and the firm moving forward, David and I began to focus more on our personal lives. The preparations for the baby became a source of excitement and hope. We began to envision a future that included not just the business, but also the new life we were about to welcome. As the firm settled into its new structure, there was a renewed sense of purpose. The transition had been challenging, but it had also brought about positive changes. The employees were adjusting, and David and Richard were working on strengthening the firm's position in the market. The last few weeks before the baby's arrival were filled with a mixture of anticipation and planning. David and I worked on creating a home environment that would accommodate our growing family. It was a new chapter for us, one that promised both challenges and joys. Despite the upheavals and uncertainties, there was a sense of hope in the air. The firm was on a path to recovery, and our personal lives were taking shape in a new and positive direction. The past had been turbulent, but it had also paved the way for new beginnings. As the final days of my pregnancy approached, I found myself reflecting on the whirlwind of events that had led us here. Life had a way of throwing curveballs, and this past year had been no exception. Despite the turbulence, I felt a sense of calm and anticipation as I prepared for the arrival of our baby. It was a new chapter, a chance for renewal amidst the chaos. David and I had settled into a new routine, balancing the demands of the firm with the preparations for our baby. The merger had been completed successfully, and the firm was beginning to find its footing under the new structure. There was a sense of stability returning, though the journey had been anything but smooth. One evening, as David and I sat together in our living room, we talked about the future. "Emma, I know things haven't been easy," David said, his hand resting gently on my stomach. "But I'm proud of how we've handled everything. And I'm excited for what's to come." His words were comforting. The past months had been a mix of stress and hope, and it was reassuring to see that we were moving forward together. Despite everything, the prospect of becoming parents was a source of joy and excitement. We were preparing for a new beginning, and it was a welcome change from the turmoil of the previous year. The arrival of our baby was a moment of profound joy. Holding our child for the first time, I felt a surge of love and hope that made all the struggles worth it. It was a reminder of what truly mattered and a symbol of new beginnings. As we adjusted to life with our newborn, there was a renewed sense of purpose in our lives. With the baby's arrival, the firm also began to settle into its new role. The merger had brought about significant changes, but it also presented opportunities for growth. David and Richard worked closely with the new partners to ensure a smooth transition, and it was clear that the firm was on the path to recovery. The employees, who had been anxious about the changes, seemed more optimistic. The new structure offered them a chance to grow and adapt, and it was gratifying to see the firm finding its way. The sense of stability was gradually returning, and there was a renewed energy in the workplace. Amidst these changes, there were still unresolved issues with Sarah and Eric. They had been living with an acquaintance since their departure from our home, and their situation was a far cry from the stability they had once known. I had mixed feelings about their situation. On one hand, there was a part of me that felt sympathy for their struggles. On the other, the pain of their actions was still fresh. One day, Sarah reached out to me again. This time, the conversation was different. "Emma," she said, her voice softer than before, "I wanted to thank you for the chance you gave us to make things right. I know I made mistakes, and I regret how things turned out. I hope we can find a way to move forward." Her words were a step towards healing, though there was still a long road ahead. I appreciated the gesture and acknowledged her sincerity. "Sarah, I think we all have things to work through, but I hope we can find a way to move forward and rebuild what's been broken." Eric, too, had expressed a desire to make amends. He had struggled with his role in the firm and the fallout from the family's issues, but he was trying to find his place again. "I'm sorry for everything," he told me during one of our conversations. "I know I didn't handle things well, and I want to make things right." It was a small step, but it was a start. Forgiveness and rebuilding trust take time, and I knew it wouldn't be easy. But there was a glimmer of hope that, in time, we could find a way to mend the fractures and move forward. As the days went by, the focus shifted more towards our family and the future. The firm was on a positive trajectory, and David and I were finding our balance as new parents. The challenges of the past year had taught us a lot about resilience, love, and the importance of family. The new chapter of our lives was filled with hope and possibility. We were navigating the complexities of balancing personal and professional responsibilities, but there was a renewed sense of purpose. The trials we had faced had strengthened our bond and deepened our understanding of what truly matters. Looking ahead, I felt optimistic about the future. The journey had been difficult, but it had also brought us closer together and provided us with valuable lessons. We were ready to embrace the new opportunities and challenges that lay ahead, confident in our ability to face them as a family. In the end, the story of our family was one of growth and transformation. We had faced adversity, made difficult choices, and navigated complex emotions. But through it all, we had found hope and a renewed sense of purpose. As we looked towards the future, we knew that the path ahead would be shaped by the lessons we had learned and the strength we had gained.